United States of America just agreed to achieve net zero carbon emissions by 2050. While this is good, it's actually a very fantastic move on paper, what's the implication for Africa and its many fossil fuel dependent economies? My guest today to talk about these issues and matters arising, joining us via Zoom from the United Kingdom, is Mr. Edwin Ikhuoria from African Executive Director, One Campaign. Hello, sir. It's good to have you on the show once again.
Thank you for having me.
You're looking rather British, if I might say, with a sweatshirt and all.
Thank you. Yes. When you stay in the weather, you look like that.
All right, that's nice. So, like we were talking about the recent United Nations Climate Change Summit and the United States of America's decision to hit zero carbon emissions by 2050, that is going to impact heavily on Africa. What are the implications for Africa?
Okay, there are several ways to look at this. It's not just the US that has made commitments to hit net zero by 2050.
Yeah.
Even Nigeria made commitment to hit net zero by 2060.
Yeah.
A year later, India made commitment to hit net zero by 2070. And several other countries like that have made those kind of commitments. The United Kingdom and many of our current trading partners. And the reason why this is important is that when you're hitting net zero, one of the biggest contributors to greenhouse gases, and it's a fossil fuel.
Yes, it is.
That's what many African economies are dependent on fossil fuel as the natural resource for their economies in terms of their source of revenues. So what this means is that when these commitments are made, in fact, about 100 countries came together, including Nigeria, to end methane, to the emission of methane, which is one of the major greenhouse gases itself. Sooner than 2050. So what this means is that we would need to remodel our economy completely. What it means is that we have to begin to think about how to diversify away from fossil fuel. And what does that also mean? It means, for instance, countries that are currently heavily dependent on the sale of crude oil for their economy, like Nigeria, they would have to find new ways of raising revenues, other than from oil. So it also means that they have to think about what are the other ways to begin to, create energy. What are the other ways to energize our economy? What are the other ways with all kinds of investments that are supposed to come into the fossil fuel sector? Right now, there is almost a global finance freeze on investments in fossil fuel or heavy gas, carbon dioxide emitting industries on the continent, not just on the continent, across the world. They are phasing out coal, phasing out all of those kind of investments abroad. And that has major implications for us because we have to change. Otherwise, we'll be left hanging in the near future.
Okay, we'll come back more to Africa and its implications for us. Well, let me ask the question. Some are arguing that without countries like China on board, this is nothing more than an elaborate PR stunt because the effect of the other countries achieving this, it's not going to be much. What is your take on that?
Now, so I think we need to take it in two ways. So China was, the president of China, the prime minister, the head of China, was not in Glasgow. But the negotiating team was there. There were some commitments that were made. And so the key word here is 1.5 degrees. So it's about how do you get the world to move into 1.5 degrees, right? So that we don't lose, we don't overheat the earth. Now, for that, they are on board in terms of the negotiators are there, right? But it's just that the political head of China was not at Glasgow. But now, let's look at it this way. If we have to consider whether whether China is going to stop or start divesting from fossil fuel, or will stop producing, will stop investing in things like coal, right? They already did that before COP. They already announced that they will not be able to do new investments in coal outside of China. That has implications for other countries.
That does.
So I wouldn't say that China is not on board. I would say that the political head was not there. That is true, but the negotiations are still going on. China has some concerns, which is also legitimate from everybody's angle. But the question is that if the whole earth does not come together, if the world does not come together to make these changes that are necessary, we are beginning to live with the impact of climate change, and nothing we can do about that unless changes begin to happen.
All right. I'm going to take you up on something, your last comment there. In Africa, we are already living with the effects of climate change. This is not tomorrow. This is not 5 years from now. This is now. In Nigeria, we can already feel the effects of Lake Chad drying up and all of that, the security implications, and all the massive implications of this. Now, that's one aspect we have to deal with.
Yes.
The other aspect we have to deal with is our own internal energy, our sources of energy. Renewable sources of energy are not where they should be in Africa, in Nigeria at the moment. So, where do we go from here? Since these two issues are major problems, is this a reasonable, a practical, achievable goal at this point in time?
The truth is matter is that we have to change. Whether we like it or not, things have to change. Otherwise, it's going to get worse. Now, let me put it in context.
Okay.
The reason why there is a major difference between what developing countries are asking for and what the developed countries are asking for is that developing countries in Africa have contributed the least to climate change. Our level of industrialization is still so small that whatever we have contributed to climate change is so small. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear. Now we can hear you. Hello?
Okay. Okay. So, because our contribution is so small, but right now, those of us living in the tropics are currently having the highest impact of climate change.
Yeah.
We're currently living with the reality that climate change has happened. Drought, long seasons of drought, long seasons of when it is raining, it gets flooded, it overflows the banks. Coastal cities are overflowing their banks, and you see all the huge amount that are spent to block the waves, and coastal cities like Lagos. Look at the huge investment that have been made across the country, like with projects like Newmark in Nigeria, where they are trying to fight erosion, soil erosion. With all of this, we are dealing with the issues right now, but we have contributed the least, and that is why the developed countries or developing countries have asked the developed countries, say, you guys caused this climate change. You guys have emitted so much greenhouse gases over many years through your industrialization. Yeah. Right now, we are dealing with the impact. For us to work together, you guys must contribute financially to see how we are to help us adapt to be able to enable us to make change. So when you talk about, to answer your questions directly, if the rich countries don't put the financing that is needed to allow Africans adapt, to be difficult to make any change. We will continue to live with this reality. The financial commitment that is required to make everybody be on board has not happened. $100 billion was committed by the rich countries in Paris, at the last COP in Paris, but up till now they have not been able to reach that benchmark. So developing countries are still waiting for this investment that needs to come from rich countries who caused this climate change and the result that we are seeing currently on the African continent and small island states that are living within the coast, so that when any change happens, they are the first ones to get the heat of this the climate change effect. So unless this happens, all of these conversations will not translate to meaningful changes on the ground, and that has major implications for us, especially on the African continent. Precisely
my sentiment. So considering that a lot of these countries are just coming back and just grappling back from the effects of COVID-19, the global shutdown of economies, when is it likely, are we going to see this soon? Because some of these countries are struggling themselves. Many of them need bailout in one form or the other. So is this a practical time to do this? Is this going to be achievable? I'm not a fan of headlines without substance.
Good. So right now, the truth of the matter is this. Whether there is COVID or not, in fact, COVID has even been demonstrated to have links with our climate change effects. But whether there is COVID or not, the reality of climate change will be here with us. So while really coming from the impact of COVID, economies are still struggling and trying to bounce back, the question is, what is the future of financing? And that is the question we need to ask. Almost all financing right now is being committed to the green sector. So Africa must be poised, must be ready to be a recipient of this global finance for climate change and adaptation. So if we're not ready to receive those, then it is our fault. It is not because people are coming out of climate change. I agree with you. We are struggling financially. Fiscally, it is almost, we're in a terrible state, particularly for many African countries who are dealing with debt because they are paying so much
interest,
repaying debt so much with so much part of their resources. But whether that happens or not, the impact of climate change will wipe out livelihoods, and unless something is done about it, unless we prioritize investment in the sector that will make us resilient, we will still continue to have this struggle. So that is the reality. We have no choice but to adapt to it.
Okay, I'm going to take this further. In Africa, we've not known to be very adaptable in our approach to changes and trends. We're still coping with technological revolutions, the internet, and all of that. We're moving rather slowly in a lot of areas. Some may argue because a lot of our leaders are from an era where things were not moving at this pace. What does Africa need to do to move from its slow pace, living in a bubble that the world and everything is going to wait for it, to move to the cutting edge where it is at the front? It has a young population. We can do this. What does Africa need to do to take advantage?
First of all, Africa must come to the reality that the world will move on without them. That is number one. COVID has demonstrated to us that when all the chips are down, every man for himself. And that's what the rich countries have shown right now. So if they don't do that, if they hope and wait that somehow in the world, some people are going to come to your rescue, that is the first fallacy that they have to come to reality with. Secondly, the second thing is that if they realize that global financing for development is going to be turning green, it's going to be going to sectors that are sustainable, right? Africa has to make itself ready to receive this. Otherwise, there will not be an investment destination. Otherwise, there will be serious pressure on our resources, especially if we're not able to sell our commodities. That will be the biggest reality. And so, the slow pace of movement is going to come with serious consequences for unemployment, serious consequences for food security, because there's going to be a lot of hunger in the land, and security implications because, again, as we've seen, coups are beginning to show up across the continent. Any leader who is really thinking strategically will know that this is the time to act. This is the time to align with where global financing is going. This is time to align with what the global strategy is going. Otherwise, you'll be left behind. You will have the population to deal with. You will be having issues and instability that we see in Sudan right now, right? We are seeing integrate. We are seeing in Ethiopia. All of this is linked to a lack of response to the needs of the people. And that is where we need to begin to think strategically. Otherwise, the world will go on without us.
All right, you've been in the development work for quite a while and you've been involved in many campaigns. What can we do to get the young people of Africa plugged in? So while on one hand, we can still be negotiating with governments, but we need to also have a second route where we boycott some of that and deal with the young people in terms of business and innovations, because they are the ones that have a lot of these innovations and have the capacity to adapt to this changing environment.
So first of all, the young people themselves have to demonstrate capacity, which is what they've been doing for a long period now. They've shown that tech innovation is part of they're natural with it. And so we need to give them the space. So politically, we have to create the space for investment for the policies that really affect the ecosystem within which young people operate. So with the tech ecosystem, the startup ecosystem, how do you reduce the burden of business registration? How do you reduce the burden of access to finance? How do you create learning hubs and where people can actually learn? How do you improve power? Power is a key component of this. So once all of these things are beginning to take the shape they should take, then you see young people will naturally plug into all of these things. So I would say that the young people are already doing them, but they need to educate themselves more with the opportunities that currently exist. It's a global village. I'm sitting down here in the UK talking to you in Nigeria, and you will see that the distance is just a technology away. So with all of these opportunities that exist, you should expect African young people to begin to look for, to understand what the ecosystem provides for them. So they can be anywhere in the world and serve any country or any company anywhere in the world. Those are the opportunities that they need to be there. But the young people have to find those opportunities, while the policymakers have to bring them on the table to show that current policies really meet the needs that really would unleash them. We are currently running a campaign called to increase jobs and create employment. But the aim of that is that young people have to be at the forefront. They have to identify where the constraints are, and then make the proposals to government, not just to criticize, but to make concrete proposals that will enable us transform. I hope that will change or catalyze change.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Edwin. It's been absolutely fantastic having you, enlightening as always. Mr. Edwin, thank you.
Thank you too for having me.
All right, so that was Mr. Edwin. We're just talking about climate change. I'd like to tell you to please reach out to us on our various social media handles, whether it's on Gmail, which is Lens and Africa, ntai@gmail.com, Facebook, Lens and Africa, NTAI. Instagram is also Lens and Africa, NTAI. You can also reach us about WhatsApp and numbers. Please WhatsApp is message only 090-122-10162. From the producer, the director, and the entire crew here saying see you same time next week.